Hello, and let's talk about the impact of the lockdown on the middle classes. We have entered week 5 of the lockdown and the number of cases continues to rise. Almost all economic activity in the country has ground to a halt. We have looked at the impact of the lockdown on migrant workers, the farmer, and the rural areas. But what about the middle class, especially in the urban areas? People who are sitting at home often incapable of working. There have been reports of many companies retrenching their employees and many others declaring pay cuts. What will happen to this section? We talked to journalist Aunindyo Chakravarty on this issue. Thank you so much, Aunindyo, for joining us. So, over the past few weeks, every Friday at Let's Talk, we've looked at, say, the impact of the lockdown on various sectors, some of these sectors in terms of construction and various other professions, and some in terms of the poorest sections of the population also. So, for instance, last week we did how subsistence or survival is what the government has been offering to the poor for the longest time, and it continues. But now, this week, let's talk maybe a bit about the middle class. So, first of all, it's a very nebulous term. So, at the risk of asking a sociological question before we get into the discussion, which group exactly are we talking about here?
So, frankly, middle class is a very nebulous term, and it's a descriptive typology of sorts, right? It doesn't really tell us, it's not an analytical tool. So I'm just using it as a descriptive kind of tool to define people who earn, let's say, have a family income. I'm taking cut off about 30,000 rupees a month, right? And I'm saying that because we know that in today's world, in most towns and cities, 30,000 is basically what stops you from being poor. Now, if someone's earning 20,000, they'll tell you they're poor. I mean, if their family income is 20,000, they're not going to say that I'm middle class. I know it's okay to say lower middle class and all that, but I'm taking middle class. I'm taking middle class as to people who earn between 30 to 60,000 rupees a month. And as you go to 60,000, I'm assuming that some of these people are older people in their 50s, and they probably have got hold of an AC at home, which they don't switch on all the time, right? In the peak summer, they switch it on. They've bought a new car, but not necessarily a big one, but probably a Wagon-R or something like that. And they have two oldish children who are now either studying in college or are looking for jobs, right? I'm taking that as a range. And then there is another range which is between 75,000 to 1 lakh, which I would say upper middle class, right? And then there is those who come way above that, but what we call them rich. Now, what I've started with is I'm taking the 2018-19 assessment year income tax data. Now, income tax, I know people say, oh, only 5.5 crore people in India file income tax returns. What they forget is that 40 crore people in India work, right? So 5.5 is not a very small number when you take into account the fact that only 40 crore people have work. And if I look at the last employment-unemployment survey, then I'm taking a multiplier of per household. 1.3 people work per household. I'm taking that as an average. So 5.5 people filing income tax returns would work out to about, I would say, 4.2 to 4.3 crore households which have people filing income tax returns, right? Now think about it, that out of that, about 2.3 crore households. Again, what I've done is I've taken what the income tax department or CBDT gives us the average monthly income under various slabs. I've multiplied that by 1.3 to arrive at a household income. It's a blunt way to do it, but there's no other way to, come up with what the middle class earns, right? So I've taken that and I've found that 30,000 household income to 60,000 household income is about 8% of all households in India. 8%. That's the gross income. This is not taxable income. This is important. CBDT releases data for gross income and taxable income. So this is their gross income, which includes business income, income from various other places, right? Not just salary. So 8% of people earn that. And then there is another about 3% of people who earn between 75 to 1 lakh rupees a month, right? Household income, which we'll say upper middle class, right? And about 1%, less than 1% of people, I think, about 40 lakh in India, 40 lakh people in India earn uh, I think there was a bit of a glitch, but I guess we'll live with that. Work from home, people understand.
Right.
So I'm saying that about 0.5 to 0.6% of households in India earn more than that. So all this talk about a huge Indian middle class, 20-30% middle class, I think is rubbish. Not more than 12% of Indians, 10 to 12% of Indians can afford to buy things. Let us be very clear about that. Now, on the other end of the scale, I'm taking data from, let's say, we have the employment data from 2016. 47% of people who work have a household income of less than 7,500 rupees
Right.
in 2016. Bring that to 2020, and that is not more than 8,500. So that's 47% of people. If you look at the NAFIS survey of 2017, again, government data, then you'll see that 30% of rural households have a household income of less than 3,558 rupees in 2017. In today's world, that is 4,000 rupees. So 30% of rural households, that's about 13 crore households, about 5.2 crore odd households have less than 4,000 rupees income. So when the government of India gives them 2,000 rupees into their accounts, 8.7969 crore people get 2,000 rupees into their account. There are more who get 500 rupees through Jandhan and etc. and things like that. Then we are essentially seeing an income, household income for these people, which is close to what they earn when they actually work.
Right.
And that is what is continuing. They were at a subsistence level, basically surviving, and they're continuing to survive. So in relative terms, they're not worse off. You know, when Marx said that how do you work out the value of labor power, he said that in some places you'll have to put the tobacco in that they smoke because it's a relative thing. The middle class relatively had a wealth effect. Today they have a poverty effect. They are being told that many places people are saying that we can't pay school fees, so we'll pay it over 3 months. So people are out of jobs, they're on furlough, they've lost their income, their trades are down. So the middle class has got nothing from the government. Relative to what they're used to, they're definitely facing a poverty impact, which is going to affect the economy for a longer term than just revival or returning back from the coronavirus.
Right. And this impact is due to the fact that they will not be in a position to purchase anything, is it? Or also because the debts
Absolutely.
are mounting?
Fear. Once you face this, you're going to think 3 times before you do anything else.
Right.
So there's fear, there are people on furlough, pay cuts across the board, people being sacked. Are they going to be brought back? Till businesses get back on track, they're not going to get people. Government servants are being told to take pay cuts, right. And there is a move now to ask government to cut salaries. This is going to have a demand impact. The middle class is in trouble. They can spend their time watching, the anchors talking about Hindus and Muslims and, abusing each other. But the truth is, they are in trouble.
Right. And as far as so what is a possible policy intervention as far as the government is concerned? Because we haven't seen, like you said, we haven't seen much of talk about what is going to happen in the urban areas, especially.
So I think that the government has to recognize that even corporates are in trouble. They cannot continue to give salaries. The government has to take care of some salaries, like a lot of countries are doing across the world. They are taking care of salaries. They're giving loans, easy loans to pay salaries.
Especially small businesses.
If that doesn't happen. Small businesses, especially small businesses, but even large businesses, they haven't been making profits for several years now.
Right.
So their margins are down. They can't really sustain it for long. Some will use this as an excuse to downsize. There's no doubt about that. But there has to be direct spending. I know that fiscal fundamentalists will say, how can you do it? But the West is doing it. We have to do it too.
Right. And is there any option for any other sort of, say, provision in terms of food or other resources which might help in the urban areas? Because again, that is not something we're talking about.
I think there are 2 things to look at. I think that this is since 2008-9, the middle class has been increasingly shrinking in size and also reducing its consumption. I think this is the second round. Middle class people will continue to eat. They'll get food to eat. I don't think food is an issue for middle class. I think what is an issue is their savings getting, you know what has happened to Franklin Templeton closing down its 6 debt funds. So there is going to be a fear, all-round fear, and the government needs to enter and stop that from happening. Because lockdowns themselves create a lot of psychological problems. This is an additional one.
Right. Also in the areas of education and healthcare, for instance, where expenditure is likely to go up. Yes.
Absolutely. Plus, also the middle class has to understand that this system is bad. They'd better start questioning the system.
Right.
Prashant.
Thank you so much, Aunindyo, for talking to us.
Thank you, Prashant.
That's all we have in this episode of Let's Talk. We'll be back on Monday with the latest news developments of the day. Until then, keep watching NewsClick.